My wife, a lawyer, suggested we get a fake divorce so she could pretend to marry my best friend. The reasoning behind this was just so his son could secure a good school registration. Seeing the affection between them, I smiled widely and agreed right then and there. But if it's just a fake divorce, surely I can still keep control of our assets, right? Chapter 1. Today, Jake officially divorced Sophia. To mark his newfound freedom, he threw a celebration and invited several friends, including Lily and me. Lily, my wife, had been Jake's lawyer. Without her, Jake's case wouldn't have gone so smoothly, and he wouldn't have had the upper hand when it came to dividing the property. So his first toast was dedicated to her. "Thank you, sister-in-law," he said. "I won't say much else. Cheers to you." Lily gave a slight frown and turned him down. "I'm on medication, can't drink," she replied. I looked at her, puzzled. She wasn't sick. What medication was she talking about? Since Lily had started dating me, she'd always been a bit delicate, relying on me whenever she felt any discomfort. I was sure she wasn't on anything, but I couldn't understand why she'd say that. Jake's hand, still holding the wine glass, froze for a moment. He stood awkwardly, smiling weakly. "It's all right, sister-in-law," he said. "I'll drink." I noticed a hint of concern flash across Lily's face as she watched Jake take the drink. She bit her lip but didn't say anything, just frowned slightly as if in reproach. Today, Jake was truly in high spirits. After nearly 6 months of dealing with Sophia's betrayal, he was finally starting to feel liberated. It had been a difficult few months, but now he was finally enjoying himself. He moved through the room, chatting with friends, drinking and having a good time. Lily, on the other hand, seemed distracted. She even knocked over my dishes twice, spilling soup on my shirt. She didn't seem to notice, though, and just wiped the table with a napkin as if nothing had happened. I was about to say something when she suddenly stood up. "I'm going to the restroom." Before I could reply, she was already out of the private room. I turned to a friend beside me and asked, "Where's Jake?" "He just went out, probably to the restroom," he answered. "By the way, where's your Lily?" I frowned and stood up. "Where are you going?" "Just getting some air. There's a window at the end of the hallway." I wasn't suspicious. I just wanted to catch a bit of fresh air, not investigate an affair. I never expected to see what I did. Around the corner, Jake was holding his head in his hands, his arm wrapped around Lily's shoulders as if to comfort her. Lily didn't pull away. Instead, she pulled some medication from her pocket and handed it to him, then opened a bottle of water, letting him sip it slowly. "Serves you right," she said, glaring at him as if angry. Jake smiled helplessly. "Lily's right, but there are so many people here. If I don't agree, I'll lose face." Lily scoffed. "Give you face? Did you forget you have gastritis?" Jake shook his head, a wry smile on his lips. "An occasional drink won't hurt." Lily pouted, shoving Jake away gently. "Fine, you're okay then. I won't worry about you." Jake laughed and pulled her back, his tone coaxing. All right, my fault. I know you care about me. Let's go back so my brother doesn't worry." Chapter 2. The moment they left, I did too. I couldn't stay there. One of them was my best friend. The other was the woman I loved most. How was I supposed to handle this? But deep down, I felt like I deserved it. Jake had been my closest friend since childhood, my brother in every sense of the word. We'd grown up together for more than 20 years. My trust in him was stronger than anyone else's, and the same went for him toward me. When he first found out about Sophia's affair, he didn't hesitate to tell me. It was a painful time for him. He couldn't understand why Sophia had betrayed him, and he was consumed by the need for answers. He didn't think about how to deal with the situation. He just wanted to know why it happened. I tried to be there for him during those months. We'd go out drinking, play cards, and revisit the internet cafe we used to hang out in during high school. But Lily wasn't happy. She threw tantrums because she felt I was neglecting her for Jake. What could I do? I'd known Jake since we were kids. He was always by my side, even when I didn't want him to be. In elementary school, he insisted on following me to the restroom, telling me that brothers should go together. In middle school, he always called out to me from behind when I ran for student council. He'd campaign for me and support me whenever I was in trouble, Even in university, when we didn't see each other often, he checked in with me every few weeks. When I was struggling to find a job, he told me to stay with him until I found one and could move out. We never argued. Despite my quick temper, he was always the one to calm me down and offer advice. Jake was a peacekeeper by nature. He'd let people take advantage of him, never complaining. When his boss unfairly gave him a task, I'd go with him and make sure he was treated fairly. People used to call him my lapdog, but he'd always respond by saying, "Making peace brings money." With a friend like that, how could I possibly abandon him during his toughest time? I tried to balance between both sides, doing my best to make peace. But now, standing there, I didn't know what to do anymore. Jake had made up his mind to divorce, but Sophia wasn't on board, so they had to go through litigation. Brother Ming, isn't your sister-in-law a lawyer with a great reputation? Can't you ask her to handle this case instead of letting someone else earn the lawyer's fees? It's better for the family, right? Of course, I wanted to help him as much as I could, but I knew it would be a hassle. Lily's willingness was a different matter. Handling a friend's case while taking money felt a little awkward. After all, Lily is Lily, and I'm me. If it were me, I'd do it for free, but in a marriage, there are things that need mutual understanding. So I said I'd ask her, though I couldn't promise anything. Sure enough, when I mentioned it, Lily looked troubled. Honey, I've thought about it. You've talked a lot about your brother, and I've always thought he's a bit soft. If he faces any conflict, I worry he might back down or settle for unfavorable agreements. What should I do then? From a litigation perspective, showing any weakness in a negotiation is disastrous. Plus, if the judgment isn't in his favor, his relationship with you could suffer. Why don't you tell him I don't usually take civil cases? It's inconvenient. I nodded and passed along Lily's concerns to Jake. Later, while we were drinking, Jake poured his heart out. He told me how, after finally settling into middle age, his parents had passed away one after another. He had focused all his energy on his career to provide for his small family, only for Sophia to cheat and transfer most of their money. Now, his relatives avoided him, and his friends treated him like a pariah. He said he didn't understand what had gone wrong in his life, feeling as if he'd somehow offended a deity. He vented his frustrations for half the night, saying he didn't know what to do and begging for my help no matter what. Moved by his words and the 2 beers I had, I decided to step in and help. I started gathering information, tracking down Sophia and her lover's addresses, planning to give them a taste of some legal intimidation. But as we were planning, Lily stepped in and stopped me. Her glare was almost enough to pierce through me. If I'd known you were going to do this, I would have taken the case myself. In the end, Lily took the case, but as time passed, she and Jake grew closer. One day, as she passed by me, she remarked, "This whole mess happened because of you." Chapter 3. When I returned to the private room, I saw Jake sitting in my seat, laughing and chatting with Lily. Lily smiled as she unconsciously accepted the food Jake served her, an action that felt strangely familiar, like it had happened many times before. Jake was the first to notice me. His expression faltered for a moment, but he quickly stood up and waved. "Brother Ming, where'd you go? I didn't see you." I pushed his arm away, saying, "Just went out for some fresh air." Jake's eyes clouded over for a second, but he pretended nothing was wrong and smiled at me. "Sit down, I'll go talk to them." I returned to my seat, feeling lifeless. I lit a cigarette, but quickly put it out in the ashtray. Lily looked at me, confused. "What's wrong with you?" I stared at her, puzzled. "What do you mean, what's wrong with me?" Lily frowned and started eating. Over the years of our marriage, whenever she saw me upset, she'd assume I was angry with her, that I was showing disrespect. It seemed like no matter what happened, I had to appear happy. As a few people gathered around Jake to toast, I saw Lily's worried expression again. It amused me, so I laughed out loud. She glanced at me, and when she realized what I was doing, she quickly looked away, avoiding my gaze and looking down. I stood up and poured a glass of wine. "Brother, you've toasted everyone else, but surely you can't refuse mine." He smiled awkwardly. "Of course not. How could I refuse Brother Ming's toast?" I noticed Lily's mixed expression of anger and concern, then looked at Jake's helpless face as he drank. For some reason, I felt oddly pleased. After one toast, I naturally went for another. The people around us marveled at how close Jake and I were. As the night wore on, Jake drank a lot, but it seemed I drank even more. In a semi-conscious state, Lily grabbed my hand, but I instinctively pushed her away. By the end of the night, Jake sat on my left and Lily on my right. They helped me into the car. Lily said to Jake, "Why don't you come with us? I'll drop you off first." Jake shook his head. "No need. I'll take a cab. You take Brother Ming home." Lily, thinking I was too drunk to notice, insisted, "It's too late, and you've been drinking. I won't feel at ease unless you're with us." Jake lowered his voice. "Sister-in-law, it's fine. You take Brother Ming home. I'll catch a cab." I overheard everything, but I didn't say anything. I closed my eyes and turned over. Jake didn't get in our car. The ride home was silent, no music, no conversation. That night, Lily stayed up watching videos in the living room. I, on the other hand, slept soundly, and for once, had a peaceful dream. Chapter 4. From the start, Jake's case had been rocky. As Lily had predicted, Jake's indecisiveness became a major issue. A lawyer needs to be able to assess the situation and strategize accordingly. But Jake often missed the key points. He'd gloss over important issues, making it hard to build a solid case. I couldn't bear watching him hesitate anymore, so I often found myself urging him impatiently to confront the problems head-on. Lily, on the other hand, sighed and called me out. "Honey, let him talk to me alone. Maybe with you here, he's embarrassed to discuss family matters. It's pretty humiliating for him." That day, they spoke in the office for over an hour. When they came out, Jake's brow was noticeably relaxed, as if a weight had been lifted. "Thank you so much, brother. Sister-in-law," he said, his voice filled with relief. I asked what happened, and he replied, "Sister-in-law is really considerate and respects my feelings." He looked at me with envy in his eyes, and that look made my heart skip a beat. But I didn't dwell on it. I turned to Lily and asked what she had done. She casually said, "Nothing much. I just had a heart-to-heart with him. I told him that every family has its troubles and some things need to be faced head-on. I also offered him some encouragement, letting him know that men need respect. Once that's in place, they open up. I'll handle future contact with him on my own." Sure enough, after that, the case progressed much more smoothly. At first, Jake would regularly update me on the progress, but I'm not sure when it started, but our conversations became less frequent. Then one day I called him to check on the case, and he casually said, "What progress? I'm not sure. Sister-in-law is handling everything." I sighed and said, "All right, I'll ask her tonight." He responded, "No need. Lily's right next to me. I'll have her talk to you." So suddenly, through my brother's phone, I found myself speaking to my wife. Lily said something, but I wasn't really paying attention. I was too preoccupied with the fact that their relationship seemed a bit too close. Lily teased, "Are you upset that I'm getting along so well with your brother?" I casually asked, "Do you still think Jake is soft and prone to backing down?" At the time, Lily was busy with her laptop taking a break. She laughed and said, "Actually, he's quite interesting." I could feel a tension building. Too many little clues were making my suspicious mind race. When did things start to unravel? It should have been that early morning when Lily and I were both asleep, and her phone suddenly rang. Half asleep, she answered it. I couldn't hear much, but I could see her sit up suddenly. "I'll be there right away. Jake, don't open the door for her. Don't talk to her, but make sure you keep the recording on. I'll call the police first, then wait for me." She hurried to find her clothes, and unlike my usual carefree self, I could see how methodical and anxious she was. It gave me a bad feeling. I asked, "What's going on?" She replied, "Sophia went to see Jake again. She's threatening to kill herself if he doesn't open the door." "You go back to sleep," she added. "I'll handle this." Without thinking, I blurted out, "Shouldn't he have called me first? Why call you? Wouldn't it be more helpful if I brought some people over?" Lily turned around, stunned, her eyes filled with disbelief. "Samuel Ming, what are you thinking? He's your best friend. His parents died, his wife cheated, and now he's tangled up in lawsuits. Are men's hearts made of stone? Why do I see no sympathy in your eyes? Jake has only you as a friend. Have you ever really cared for him? Every time he asks you to hang out, you say you're busy. When has he ever called you for help?" She slammed the door as she left. I stood there for a long time, fighting the surge of emotions, before finally deciding to follow her. When I arrived, Jake's door was open and I could hear his voice inside. He sighed, saying, "She almost slit her wrists at the door. She said if she died, it'd be my fault and she'd haunt me forever." Lily's voice, gentle but firm, responded, "It's okay. She won't really do it." Jake said, "Look at me. Trust me, okay?" I didn't hear more. I went straight inside and said, "What are you two doing?" Looking back now, I realize I was just fooling myself. I didn't want to hear more, didn't want them to continue talking. I didn't want to hear what I wasn't ready to hear. Chapter 5. Lately, Lily had been leaving for the law firm early. By the time I woke up, she was already gone. She made me breakfast and left it on the table with a note reminding me to eat. I stared at the food for a long time but couldn't bring myself to touch it. At noon, while I was managing the collection of debts, I got a call from the property manager. He asked if we had forgotten to turn off the faucet at home because the downstairs neighbor had complained about a leak. It didn't make sense. The house had been unoccupied for a while, and the main valve had been turned off. How could there be a leak? I rushed over to check. Sure enough, it was our problem. The bathroom faucet had been left running and water had spread across the floor. I quickly turned it off and apologized to the downstairs neighbor, negotiating compensation. I smiled as I listened to their complaints, finally managing to resolve the issue. After the neighbor left, I felt my face turn cold. The property manager then asked, "Have you rented out the house? Who's living there now?" "Yes, who's living there?" It was Jake. I didn't expect it. When I saw the photos of Jake and his son on the cabinet, a rush of blood surged to my head. My nails dug into my flesh. Was I blind? I thought I had been calm enough, but when I took out my phone to call, my hand was trembling. How embarrassing. These hands, made for fighting, were shaking like a leaf. Taking a deep breath, I tried to suppress the urge to scream. I called Lily, but there was no answer. Then I tried Jake, but he didn't pick up either. What was I supposed to think? What else could I think? Without hesitating, I headed straight to Lily's office. She might not be there, or maybe she would be. If she was, what should I say? My mind was in turmoil as I made my way there. I never expected to find Jake in Lily's office. Lily was sitting at her desk, and Jake was standing behind her. He was leaning over the table, one hand on it, and the other holding the mouse. Lily was tilting her head, looking at him intently. I recognized that look. I knew exactly what it meant. Bang! I shoved the door open, and it hit the wall with a sharp sound. Chapter 6. The office was left with just Lily and me. She spoke first, her tone calm. "Honey, I want to help Jake. He resigned from his job, and he's at a low point in his life. He asked me for advice, so I suggested he look into some course outlines. If he's interested, he could pursue a master's in law, either for further studies or as a career path. It's a good option, and our firm is hiring." Lily felt so unfamiliar to me at that moment. I never knew she cared so much about clients. I replied, "I never knew you cared so much about your clients." She looked at me, irritated. "Stop with the sarcasm. There's nothing between Jake and me. Innocence speaks for itself." I nodded. "Got it." But as I got up to leave, she grabbed my sleeve. "What do you mean?" she asked. I stared at her, confused. "Isn't it obvious? Do as you please." When I opened the door, Jake was standing outside. He looked anxious, his face pale. "Ming, it's not what you think. Let me explain." I didn't need any explanations. "No need. Lily has made it clear." Jake seemed even more terrified, quickly glancing at Lily and then back at me. "What did she tell you?" I smirked. "Does it matter?" Jake's expression shifted, his hair standing on end. He knew I had said those words to others before, and the outcome wasn't good. But then, Lily intervened. "Honey, don't threaten him. There's really nothing between us, I swear." Jake sighed in relief, and I knew these two well. Sometimes I was grateful for this familiarity, but other times, I hated it. "By the way," I said to Jake, "you forgot to turn off the faucet when you left today. Next time, be careful. You know that house was left to me by my parents. Can you move out in 3 days and Lily, please return the keys?" Jake's eyes widened in horror, his face growing even paler. Lily stepped forward to speak, but I shook my head at her. There are so many people here. You don't want me to make a scene, do you? I walked away without looking back. I heard later that after I left, Jake fainted. Lily told me this when she came back to pack her things. I let him stay in the old house because Sophia kept pestering him. You're his best friend. You know his state. He quit his job and went home because his life was overwhelming him. Now, because of your threats, he's even more anxious. I just wanted to help him. I was going to discuss it with you, but you were always suspicious. We didn't want you to misunderstand. She paused, then added, I know you're upset with me now, so let's take a break. There's a big criminal case that needs our team's attention, and it could be an opportunity for me. I'll stay at the firm for a few days. Lily, I called. You're going to the firm, right? Lily looked at me with cold eyes. Samuel, what do you want from me? Can't I have my own career? Then she stormed out, slamming the door behind her without hesitation. Suddenly I remembered what Jake had told me that day when we were drinking. He said, the day I angrily questioned Sophia, why are you doing this to me? Didn't you say you'd always be by my side no matter what? Always supporting me and encouraging me? And Sophia just smiled faintly, as if she were talking about something completely normal. She said, everything in this world changes. Why can't I? Why can't my feelings for you change? Jake smiled bitterly. What's even stranger is that she was the one who cheated. She was the one who fell out of love, but in the end, she shamelessly said she never thought about divorcing me. As if not divorcing me was some kind of favor she was doing for me. Chapter 7. The next afternoon, I went to the hospital. Before I went, I stopped by Lily's law firm. She was there. Her colleague told me it was lunchtime, but that she'd been going to the hospital on time these past few days. The colleague hesitated, then added awkwardly, she's just kind-hearted and treats everyone the same. Don't overthink it. I smiled and left. Kind-hearted? Not really. In fact, she was a bit cold. She always kept her own business clear and separate from others. In her words, not empathizing is part of my professional ethics and respect for myself and others. For so many years, she'd never done anything that could lead to misunderstandings. If she was kind to someone, it was genuinely from the heart. When I got to the hospital, I found Lily gently persuading Jake to eat. You need to eat something. Your stomach is bad. You can't go on like this. Think about it. Your parents wouldn't want to see you like this. Sister-in-law, you're so good to me, but Brother Ming seems like he can never forgive me. Lily sighed. That's just his temper. I'll talk to him. And I'll talk to him about that other thing. Talk to me about what? I was puzzled, but Jake suddenly grabbed Lily's shoulder. Don't tell Samuel. This is my business. It has nothing to do with you guys. I'll solve it myself. Don't involve Brother Ming. Lily looked worried. Her hand unconsciously brushed against Jake's palm, but when she realized it, she quickly pulled back. I stood at the door, numb, watching it all unfold. A sharp pain pierced my heart, and I clenched my teeth, using the pain to suppress my emotions. What do you want to talk to me about? I asked. The moment they saw me, Jake looked terrified, and Lily quickly stood up, putting some distance between herself and Jake. Jake's face turned pale as he tried to force a smile. Samuel, you're here. I looked at him with no expression and then turned to Lily. Speak. What do you want to talk to me about? Nothing. Nothing. Jake immediately denied it, but Lily stepped forward. Honey, there's something I need to ask for your help with, she said. I motioned for her to continue, but Jake tried to stop her. Lily didn't give him a chance. Samuel, let's get a divorce. It's not easy for Jake to raise a child on his own, and now Nico's school registration is a problem without the proper house registration. Let's help him one more time. Once Nico's schooling is settled, we can remarry. I never imagined I'd hear something so absurd. I doubted my ears, unsure if they were even working correctly. Jake, looking pale, shook his head vigorously. Brother Ming, that's not it. Sister-in-law is overthinking it. I can handle it myself. Like a car with failed brakes, Lily kept going. Honey, let's just get a temporary divorce. Jake kept waving his hand, saying, Brother Ming, sister-in-law is confused. It's just her lawyer's occupational habit talking. That's why she came up with such a ridiculous idea. With a persuasive look, Lily said to me, It's nothing, Samuel. Many immigration lawyers do this. Fake marriages and divorces are common. You might not have heard of it, so you think it's a big deal. But sometimes you have to make way for the living. A marriage certificate or a divorce certificate is just a piece of paper. Nico's future is the most important thing. It's just a formality. Her words made me feel disgusted. I silently clenched the divorce papers I had just drafted and shoved them back into my bag. Lily, you're dreaming, I said. If that's the case, we need to reconsider the division of assets. Chapter 8. Lily chased after me as I left the hospital, grabbing my hand, her brows furrowed in confusion. Samuel, let's talk, I sneered. Talk about what? Divorce? Lily replied, You can say anything, can't you? She frowned and said, It's a fake divorce. I just want to help him. I asked, Lily, do you even believe what you're saying? I'm telling the truth. Why don't you believe me? She asked, her voice tinged with frustration. I mocked, All right, I'm in no hurry, or you could sue me. You haven't handled a case for yourself yet, have you? Lily looked at me seriously, a hint of grievance in her eyes. Honey, I'm discussing this with you. I don't want a real divorce. This is just a last resort. I thought for a moment, then nodded. Lily, are you out of your mind? This reason might convince you, but it won't convince me. If you want to convince me, you'll need to be more practical. Just as Lily was about to respond, her phone rang. I turned and left, but she hesitated when she saw the caller ID. We'll talk later, she said. I silently looked at my hand for a moment before turning and leaving. On the way out, I glanced back and saw Lily hurrying into the hospital. Jake had said he wanted to talk to me, so we met at a restaurant we used to frequent. Jake looked unwell, pale and haggard. When he saw me, he stood up awkwardly. Brother Ming, you're here. Please sit. What would you like to drink? I ordered a pot of tea and sat down, lightly tapping my fingers on the cup. Go ahead. What do you want to say? Jake gave an awkward smile. Brother Ming, don't listen to sister-in-law. She's just worried about my kid's schooling. I'll handle it myself. I can't trouble you and your wife anymore. Jake, for once, was smart enough to lump Lily and me together, making it seem like we both wanted to help. But it was too late. Jake, I said, do you like Lily? Jake shook his head repeatedly. I don't. How could I? How could I possibly like her? Then I don't understand, I said. If you don't like her, why are you giving her hints? I didn't, Jake vehemently denied it. I smiled and shook my head. Jake, adults have their boundaries. We're both men. Do I need to explain what certain behaviors mean? Do you think your relationship is just between a client and a lawyer, between a doctor and a patient, a landlord and a tenant? There are boundaries. Do you think you haven't crossed the line? With hints. Not every woman would shamelessly initiate. You two are quite in sync, aren't you? I smiled as I finished, my fingernails scraping the surface of the cup, creating a sharp noise. Jake's face turned as white as a ghost. He looked at me in fear and said, Samuel, I really didn't. I stared coldly at him. Didn't you, Jake? I have to admit, you're very good at reading women and understanding their emotions. When I used to ride in your car, what did you say? You said your passenger seat was only for Sophia or your girlfriend. I called you a hopeless romantic back then, and you said, it still matters because women care about these small details. So I want to ask you, what were you thinking when you had Lily sit in the passenger seat when you came to see me? Jake froze in place, unable to respond. I pointed across the way, waiting for his answer. I was already there before you arrived. The view was perfectly clear, so I could clearly see Lily with Jake. When they stepped out, she stood on tiptoe to adjust his scarf. Jake opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. Don't tell me she's just being too kind and concerned about you as a client. Jake, if you insist on that, I'll have to believe you think I'm a fool. If that's your stance, then our conversation ends here. What do you think? Jake slouched back into his chair, and I looked at him without emotion. He spoke, barely able to meet my gaze. Brother Ming, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I really was wrong, he said. My parents passed away, my wife betrayed me, and I suddenly felt like I had no direction. It felt like I was living my life, and everything else was just separate. Brother Ming, I never thought anything would happen with sister-in-law. I just couldn't let go of her kindness and concern, and that led to this. He went on about how he felt empty inside and needed a woman to fill that void, Unfortunately, that woman was my wife. I'm sorry, Brother Ming. I was wrong from the moment Lily suggested the fake divorce. I knew it was wrong. Don't worry, nothing ever happened between us. I'll draw the line and give her back to you. We won't see each other again. Brother Ming, please forgive me this once. I smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. Now you realize? I said with mockery. Jake, you're still not being honest. Your first move in an emergency was to call her, not me. If I hadn't shown up, do you really think it's okay for a man and a woman to be alone together? She let you stay in my house out of pure kindness? Do you think that's normal? Lily, as a client, is planning your career, even trying to get you into her firm. Is that normal? You say it's just because you couldn't let go of her kindness and concern. That's a tough claim. You two are practically inseparable, and you only realized your mistake when she suggested the fake marriage. I leaned in closer, my voice colder now. It's not like that, Brother Ming, Jake said, panicked. Does it feel good? I asked. My wife goes out of her way to be good to you, even willing to divorce me. It must be thrilling, right? Jake shook his head, speechless. I laughed bitterly. Stop pretending, Jake. You just said you'd give her back to me. The word return. You're implying she was yours, right? So I'm not wrong. You two must have already confessed your feelings, right? Jake stared at me in disbelief, unable to comprehend how I knew. Jake, I've known you for over 20 years. No one knows you better than I do. My words hit him like a punch to the gut. Samuel, he muttered. Remember the guy Sophia cheated with? I met him before your lawsuit. He wasn't with Sophia anymore. He even had a new girlfriend and was planning to marry her by the end of the year. He was doing well, at peace, almost like he'd been reborn. He wanted to apologize to you, saying he was immature back then and hoped you could forgive him. He said he had moved on and hoped you could too. I understood Jake's situation, but I wasn't backing down. He knew what I was implying and he begged me to stop, but I kept going. Can you forgive him, Jake? He tore your family apart, ruined your life, and then walked away with an apology. Why does he think he can pick up the pieces he left behind? Why should he get to return? Jake, why is he so awful? I added, I truly considered you a brother back then, but I admit I was short-sighted. I never expected Sophia to cling to you after that guy disappeared. Chapter 9. Jake was visibly trembling and he asked me what I wanted. I sneered, a divorce, making room for you two. Jake's lips trembled. I never thought about it before and I never will. Brother Ming, I won't be with her, he said, his tone serious, almost like an oath. Really? I asked, my voice flat. That's your business, I said, looking out the window. If Lily knew Jake was saying this, she'd be crushed, I thought, smiling at the irony. Seeing my smile, Jake hurriedly said, Brother Ming, if you want a divorce, then divorce her. She doesn't deserve you. I stood up, looking at him with disdain. Jake, you don't need to call me brother anymore. We stopped being brothers a long time ago. Jake and I had truly grown up together. From kindergarten to marriage, always the closest of friends. Our families lived close, just upstairs and downstairs. When we were kids, his parents fought a lot, and he'd hide in the hallway crying. I'd take my allowance, buy snacks, and bring him to my house to play games with me. I even stood up to his father when he tried to hit him. Later, seeing how pitiful Jake was, I invited him over for meals and to do homework together every day. Everyone knew Samuel's best friend was Jake. Everyone knew that Samuel always stood behind Jake. If I had food, he'd never go hungry. I never minded sharing with him. From kindergarten to high school, the farthest we were ever apart was the distance between classrooms. Even in college, we kept in touch. My dad joked I should just adopt him as my godson. Jake nodded. I grew up eating Ming's family's food, calling Samuel brother, and calling Uncle Dad. That was only right. How laughable to be betrayed like this by the one person I trusted most. I truly deserved it. Lily came home at dusk. She said to me, Honey, let's just help Jake. He's your best friend. You can't bear to see him down and out, right? I nodded and said, Yes, but I'm not a lawyer. I can't take divorce lightly. It makes me uneasy, especially since a divorce involves asset division. Even if it's fake, the procedure is real. She responded, Honey, it's just a fake divorce. When the time is right, we'll remarry. If you're worried, I'll transfer all the assets to you. I looked at her, watching the woman in front of me, seeing her head over heels in love, watching her deceive herself. I let out a helpless sigh and said, "All right, Lily, get a divorce then." Our divorce process went smoothly and quickly. The divorce agreement was prepared by her, and everything, property, car, and bank savings, was transferred to me. On the day we received the divorce certificate, I asked Lily to move out of the house. She was stunned, confused. "What do you mean?" I replied flatly. "The house is mine. We're divorced. Isn't it normal for you to move out?" "We only fake divorced," she countered. "Who told you that?" I laughed coldly. "Lily, I never intended to fake divorce you." Lily, quick as always, realized instantly. "You tricked me," she said, eyes wide in realization. "Tricked you? Not really," I responded. Lily stood there, helpless for a long time before she spoke again. "You don't have to do this. There's nothing between Jake and me. There never will be. I just wanted to help him. There's no possibility between us." I looked at Lily, incredulous. "You really don't know me, do you? Do you really think I could ignore the ambiguity between you and Jake? Do you really think I, Samuel, could swallow this? I can't. But what can I do? I can't kill you, so just stay away from me. Don't stand in front of me and disgust me." My words were harsh, and Lily's eyes reflected a trace of helplessness. "Samuel, don't treat me like this," she pleaded. I sneered and shook my head, signaling for her to leave. Her face flushed with anger. "Fine," she said, fury in her voice. "Don't regret this." Chapter 10. Lily moved out, taking only one suitcase. I asked her what she planned to do with the rest of her things. She said, "Throw it away." She was angry and even thought I was acting out of spite. I smiled and nodded. "All right, I got it." The next day, I cleared out all of Lily's personal items. For her work-related belongings, I hired a courier to send them to her law firm. As soon as the items were delivered, Lily called me, sounding extremely aggrieved. "Samuel, what are you trying to do?" I responded. "What am I trying to do? What a stupid question, Lily. Can you stop being so stupid?" I hung up and blocked her on all communication platforms. From that day on, I cut off all contact with Lily. Later, Jake sent me a message. "Brother Ming, I'm leaving. I won't bother you anymore." A couple of days later, he sent another message. "I gave custody of the child to Sophia. She'll handle his schooling. I was too stubborn before, thinking a mother like her would affect our son's future. But now I realize it's just a case of the pot calling the kettle black. She is still Nico's mother. Brother Ming, I'm sorry." I deleted the messages without replying. Not everything in this world can be forgiven with a smile. If everything could be erased so easily, that would be great. What happened between Lily and Jake? I didn't know, and I didn't care to find out. However, after Jake told me that Nico's schooling issue was resolved, Lily drank a lot. Her friend called me. "Brother Ming, Lily's drunk. Can you come and pick her up?" I said, "We're divorced." I thought I made myself clear, but I didn't expect Lily to come to me on her own. Though she had a slight smell of alcohol, her eyes were clear. I knew she wasn't drunk. I asked, "What are you doing here?" Lily smiled at me. "Honey, Nico's schooling is settled. Let's remarry tomorrow." I stood still for a few seconds. "Lily, are you joking?" Lily's lips pressed together into a straight line. "We agreed on this. It was a fake divorce." Her tone made me feel absurd, just like when I first heard her say she wanted a fake divorce. "Lily, I don't believe you. Can't you see it? Is it fun to deceive yourself like this?" I tried to close the door, but she blocked it. "Honey, let's talk." Lily and I missed the best time to have a good conversation long ago. Now it was too late to say anything. But since she wanted to talk, I would talk with her. I just hoped this would end here. But how to start the conversation? I couldn't find a clue for a moment. Finally, Lily spoke. "Our fake divorce was just to help Jake. Now that Nico's issue is solved, let's remarry." I wasn't surprised. It was the same old topic, and it wasn't what I wanted to hear. "If you want to talk like this, then I don't think it's necessary." I tried to get up to see her off, but Lily pulled me back. She screamed, "What do you want? I won't contact Jake anymore. I told you before I was just helping him. This was the last time I helped him." Her question stunned me. "What do I want?" I repeated. "From the beginning to the end, you never asked for my opinion." At that moment, the emotions I had suppressed for months finally exploded. I had spent so much time trying to hold on to my dignity as a man. The betrayal Lily and Jake caused wasn't just emotional, it was the complete destruction of trust. They treated me like a fool, flirting behind my back, humiliating me to a degree I never imagined, all while thinking I should just accept it. And for the longest time, I started questioning myself. What did I do wrong that made them think they could walk all over me? Were they secretly laughing at me while I was being sincere? Were they mocking me for being blind and foolish? Lily, the worst part is you. If you wanted someone else, a divorce would have been the obvious choice. But you chose Jake. You knew he was once my closest friend, my best brother, and yet you still kept things ambiguous with him. Lily, you are despicable. You say you won't contact Jake anymore. Why? Is it because you don't want to, or is it because Jake blocked you? He did, didn't he? Jake is a scumbag, but you are even worse. You think you can turn back now, that we can still make things work, don't you? But why should I? Why should I still try to make things work with you? Do you think you're so important that I should take you back? You say Sophia is a terrible person, but how are you any different from her? Do you really need me to spell it out for you? If I ignore you, you still degrade yourself by coming to me. You still refuse to own up to your mistakes, instead blaming it all on me, my suspicions, my so-called dirty thoughts, my selfishness. Isn't that right, Lily? You really deserve to be scolded. The words came out so suddenly that Lily was stunned. She said, her voice trembling, I never blamed you, or wanted to hurt you, Samuel. I never wanted to hurt you. I sat down on the sofa, slowly closing my eyes. What do you mean by not wanting to hurt me? You liked someone else, but hid it from me. Isn't that what it was? You feel it's painful not to be with another man, but at the same time, you think you're doing it for me, preserving our family's dignity, protecting my face. You feel like that makes you noble? I took a breath, looking at her coldly. Lily, I see it clearly now. Your relationship with Jake wasn't just about helping him. It was mixed with your need for revenge against me. You've been dissatisfied with our marriage for a long time, haven't you? You've been tired of this relationship, of me. You think I've held you back, tried to control you, and that a little revenge doesn't matter. You think all I lose is my dignity as a man, while you lose love. But Lily, you're not as important as you think, and I'm not as pathetic as you think. I said long ago, if you're unhappy, get a divorce. Whoever leaves can move on. Lily seemed hit hard by my words. Her body slumped into a chair as she muttered, It shouldn't be like this. We shouldn't have become like this. I stared at her, my voice cold. What should we have been like? When you agreed to marry me, you said you loved me and would love me for a lifetime. But when we got married, you said you'd stay with me forever. Later, when I sensed you weren't happy with me and brought up divorce, you cried and said anything but divorce. And now, you've strayed. You've broken your promises, and now you expect me to wait for you. Why? Chapter 11. Lily left, her figure stumbling slightly as she walked away, her back disappearing into the distance. She never came back to face me. There were no further developments between her and Jake. The last message I received from Jake wasn't long ago. He told me he was leaving the city, heading back to his hometown. Brother Ming, everything that's happened is my fault. I deserve this miserable ending, but I've always considered you my brother. Whether you acknowledge me as your brother or not, you'll always be my brother. I found his words laughable, but for the sake of our old brotherhood, I personally saw him off to his hometown. Epilogue. Lily's perspective. My first encounter with Samuel was unforgettable. It happened when I was at university, working part-time as a tutor in an old neighborhood, no elevator, no security system, and the stairwell lights didn't even work. That day, I arrived right on time and pushed open the iron door to the hallway, only to find myself face to face with him, standing at the first-floor exit. I froze, waiting for him to either go upstairs or leave, but he didn't move. In that moment, panic took over. Could he be dangerous? What should I do? Run away? But my legs felt like they were made of stone, unable to move. Even my breath came to a halt. After what felt like an eternity, someone finally came downstairs. They asked the man, "Why are you just standing there? Weren't you going out for a smoke? The man chuckled. I think I scared this young lady. That man was Samuel. I hadn't gotten a good look at him then, but later at school he approached me, soft-spoken, as if afraid of scaring me. He was gentle, considerate, everything Jake wasn't. Jake was sensitive, melancholic, full of worries and timid, unable to handle responsibilities. I didn't care for him much, especially when Samuel was hurt because of him. By then, Samuel and I were already together. I was furious, cleaning his wound, asking, "Aren't you afraid?" He laughed sheepishly. Of course I am, but how can a big brother ignore his little brother in trouble? Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Samuel was always like this, never taking advice, never needing anyone's help. I often thought maybe it was because Samuel was so headstrong, so much of a macho man, that when someone warm and respectful like Jake came along, he didn't stand a chance.